next video, we're going to talk about how to lift the bar off from the floor to prepare it into the optimal position for the snatch. Now, it's important to note that the lift off from the floor in the snatch or in the clean is very different from a conventional deadlift that you'll see in powerlifting. For one, the goal of the lift off is to keep the pressure even through the feet so that you're ready to extend and send the bar upwards. Again, remember the goal is to get the bar overhead or to the shoulders. We're not just trying to get the bar to the hips. So the way that we interact with the bar from the floor is going to be very different from the way we shift our balance in our feet in the conventional deadlift. So usually the conventional deadlift, as you are setting up, your gaze may be a little bit more towards the floor. As we set up for the snatch or the clean, you do want a little bit more upright extension in your back, keeping your gaze above the horizon with a slight stretch in your neck and your chin upwards, and this will help to keep your face fixed in the same spot and keep an upward trajectory so that we can move the bar around our body and we're reducing the amount of horizontal displacement that we're putting into the bar. We don't want our face and our gaze to go forward or back because the bar and our body will usually follow what our head and neck are doing, and that's going to make the bar get away from us or cause the bar to be pulled back way too far into us. Although I don't recommend taking the bar completely from the floor in a full snatch for beginners, we should definitely talk about the start position and how to lift off the bar from the floor once you do get to that point. It will help to develop that strength in your pulling technique, learning how to drive your feet evenly through the ground, and also working your posterior chain, hamstrings, glutes, and staying over the bar to get that in optimal position when we extend to go into the snatch overhead. When learning the lift off, it's important that you set the bar up to its appropriate height, whether or not you have wooden discs, training plates, or lighter plates. You do want to make sure that that bar is elevated to a point where you're not guessing where it is on the shins. You know exactly where that bar needs to start. Let's talk about the key points of the start position. First of all, you want to make sure that the bar is right over where the crease of your toes starts. If the bar starts too close to the middle of your foot, then what's going to happen is as you lift the bar, your knees are very bent, so that bar is going to get pushed forward. So I find starting the bar right over the crease of the toes. So if you were to stand directly over the bar, move in here for a second, stand directly over the bar, and just see about 1.5 inches of your toes peeking on the other side of the bar straight down. That's a great place to start. You want to start your feet in their jumpy stance. So if you do a few hops in place, you'll find that for a lot of you that's somewhere around hip to shoulder width distance, it's where you feel comfortable jumping because that's going to be the position that we're going to be driving and extending from. I usually like to point the toes slightly outwards in my starting position, although you might be able to get away with going forwards. If you have longer legs, you may benefit from starting slightly duck-footed, which means pointing the toes out around 11 and 1 o'clock. This will allow your knees to track outwards to the side so that when you pick the bar up, your knees can come back out of the way of the bar sooner. If your toes are pointed forward, your knees are going to stick out forward more and they're going to take longer to get back out of the way of the bar. Now that we have our foot set up and the bar is positioned right over the crease of the toes, I'm going to think about having my arms vertical straight down to the ground. And you want to think about the arms being like heavy, big cables or heavy ropes that are going to be holding onto the bar. If you start with the arms forward or back, then you're going to lose that pull that the bar has against the arms to keep it vertical and in that straight line. To adjust the bar, I'm going to find a spot on the wall in front of me just above the horizon, so not at the floor or not too high on the ceiling, but somewhere around the middle point of the wall. And I'm going to keep looking at that point as I send my arms straight down, send the hips back, and bring my shins to touch the bar. Now at this point, you may need to do a few adjustments here. For example, you may need to look at the bar and find out where your grip is, which is fine, but just keep in mind where that point is on the wall in front of you so that you can keep your gaze fixed there the whole time. I'm going to find my snatch grip, and then what I'm going to do here is make sure that my arms still feel like they're vertical at the start position. I'm going to find my gaze, find my position that I need to set my eyes on in front. I'm going to slightly extend my back upwards so that I have a more upright trajectory when I start to lift the bar. If we start with our gaze too low and our shoulders too far forward, when we lift the bar off of the floor, then our hips are going to rise up fast, or we're going to put a lot of horizontal displacement in the bar when we try to lift it from the floor. But let's go ahead and find that start position. And what I recommend doing here is if you have a camera, go ahead and take a photo of what you look like from the side and also from a 3/4 view. And let's talk about some key points here of the setup position. Everyone's anatomy is going to be a little bit different depending on if you have longer or shorter femurs, if your torso is longer or shorter. So the position that your hips are going to be in the start position will differ for everybody else just based on your anatomy. First thing is making sure your entire foot is pushing into the floor. Your weight should not be back on your heels or on the ball of your foot, but you're pressing right through the center of your foot, thinking about the point under your toe, big toe, pinky toe, and heel, all connected to the floor at the same time so that you can start the lift off by pushing the floor away with your feet. The second piece is making sure that your shoulders are slightly in front of the bar, but not too far in front of the bar. So if you start too far in front of the bar, then you're going to be opening your chest a lot to come up to extension. If you start too far behind the bar, then a lot of the load is going through your quads and not your posterior chain, and you're gonna find that your knees are bent more excessively forward than they need to be, and that bar is gonna start forward. So you wanna make sure that your hips are just above the knees, your shoulders are just above the hips, and that your shoulders are directly over the bar. Again, if you think arms vertical and straight down, your shoulders are likely going to be in the right position that they're gonna be in. Once you have found that start position, we're gonna start by just bringing the bar 1 inch off the floor, just an inch. But we're gonna focus on where that weight balance is in our feet and making sure that we are keeping our back tight and engaged. So we're keeping our gaze forward at that target on the wall in front of us. Chin is up above the horizon. You should feel a stretch in the front of your neck here if your chin is upright, and you have a slight extension upwards in your back, making sure that you're pressing the middle of your back through, like you're pushing your belly button through your thighs. So we're going to set up the bar. You're going to find that tension, taking that little cling out of the bar, making sure your feet are evenly pressed to the floor. And we're going to press our feet into the floor and lift the bar just an inch, finding that tension and setting back down. So go ahead and practice lifting the bar up just an inch at a time, finding that engagement with your feet into the floor and making sure that your back stays the same angle. If your hips tend to rise too fast or your shoulders tend to rise too fast, make sure that you're taking the appropriate measurements in order to make sure that they rise up at exactly the same rate and your gaze is staying fixed. Next, we're gonna add on to the lift off and lift the bar upwards towards the knee. Now, the key here is to make sure that our knees are getting out of the way. If our knees are forward, then the bar is gonna be pushed forward of the middle of our foot. We actually want to sweep the bar in with our lats, so kind of squeezing this muscle group back here as we're sweeping the bar in to make sure that it's coming over the midfoot. So we're starting the bar over the crease of the toes, but in the process of getting that bar further up the legs, we do have to keep it over the middle of the foot, so we do have to sweep that bar in. So we're gonna practice bringing the bar to our knees, getting our shins to vertical, so setting up in our start position, gaze fixed, arms vertical, feet engaged with the floor. You're gonna press the floor with the feet, and you're going to stop right at the knees and set the bar down. Pausing for just a moment. The entire time, your hips and your shoulders are raising at about the same rate, and you're keeping your upper shoulder blades, you pinch your upper shoulder blades together, you're keeping that directly over the bar, arms vertical, so that you're in the ideal position to get ready to bring it further up the thighs. Now at that position there at the knees, you want to make sure that your shin is vertical, so you have to slightly push your knees back and feel a little stretch in your hamstrings. It is a very tough position if you don't have a lot of strength back there to be able to hold. And that's why we're going through this position first and pausing there so you can start to develop some strength and awareness in your posterior chain. Now that we practiced bringing the bar to the knees, now we're ready to start bringing that bar up to our mid-thigh where we're in that hang position. That's the same position that we were practicing earlier when we were doing our hang snatches. Setting up with the bar, bars over the crease of the toes, pressing the feet evenly through the floor. We're pushing the floor away. Even though we're pulling the bar from the floor, think of it really as a push. You're standing, you're pressing the floor away like one of those seated leg press machines, and we are elevating the bar as such. So we're setting up, gaze is fixed, chin up, stretching the neck slightly, extending the back, engaging the mid-back, pressing our torso and our belly button through our thighs, and making sure that our knees are pushing out towards the insides of the elbows and they're not starting too far inwards. We're going to raise and lift the bar past the knees and continue to raise our shoulders and hips until that bar is at mid-thigh. Now, at this position here, and you don't have to hold it for very long, go ahead and set the bar down for a second. But at this position, notice how my shoulder blades are still over the bar. My arms still feel vertical, so they're not forward or back. I'm sweeping the bar in against the thigh, so the bar is not floating away. It's actually right against the thigh, and my feet are pressing evenly into the floor. I feel like I'm ready to jump here at this position. So a lot of times as we lift the bar, a lot of people tend to shift the weight back to the heels in order to straighten the legs, or a lot of people tend to have the weight of the bar carry them forward onto the toes. And we'll make sure that you're keeping that engagement through your whole foot. You're pressing your foot evenly as you're standing, as you're pushing the floor away and raising the bar, staying covered over the bar. Again, the purpose of the lift off is to set our body and the bar in an optimal position to extend upwards into that snatch. So as we're lifting off to the mid thigh, as I mentioned earlier, you are achieving this hang position here, which is the same as if you started from our high hip position, you came down into your hang and then did your snatch from there. So we are learning this from the ground up to find that powerful position so that eventually when you feel comfortable taking the snatch from the hang position and once you start building from the floor, you know exactly how to get there from lifting off from the floor.